husband took video of me with my AP and ruined my life by showing it to everyone.
My life has been a roller coaster ever since I came to this world. I would have some good years and bad years. I met someone and that person turned out to be my husband after years of dating. He was a very dominant boss. That is what I loved about him. He was very superior and made me submit to every decision he made. He was a real man. Every woman in our neighborhood wished their husband was like mine. He was a role model to some men. Everything was perfect until he started paying more attention to his work, and I started feeling like I wasn't enough, and also I was getting bored. I missed his compliments and the way he looked at me and touched me. Sometimes I'd be left alone in his huge house, and he'd be gone for a week on a business trip. I even thought maybe he was cheating on me. I was needy, but you can't blame me. He made me like this. With all the love he gave me and how he treated me, and all of a sudden he just got busy and paid little attention to me. I am sure someone can relate to what I am talking about. So let me tell you what exactly happened before my life made a very huge turn during a happy moment. I, female 29, met Matt Harrison, male 34. My husband in a bookshop where I was previously working before I became a fashion designer. He was there to sign autographs for his book, which was the bestseller at the time. I was shocked when he approached me because I didn't think a man of his standard would want to be with someone like me. A few weeks later, well after he had approached and we exchanged numbers, he came and picked me up after work for a little date, just to get to know each other, you know. And I found him very interesting and funny. He was born and raised in Texas. One thing I knew and had noticed about my husband since we had known each other was that he really loved his father, and he was his inspiration, because he once told me that his father owned a junkyard and taught him how to be a responsible man. What inspired him the most about his dad was that he gave him everything he wanted, and also his junkyard was very profitable. The book he wrote was about his father and how he motivated him to be the man he is today. He was more than just a man. He is very successful, but he doesn't show unless you know a lot about him. I loved the fact that he was not arrogant because of his riches. He was just a low-key, successful person. He moved his family to Los Angeles. His father wanted to move in an area with an ocean view. Imagine the privilege. We shared a lot about ourselves and our goals. I considered him my best friend because he was a good listener, you know. He knew how to make time for me, well, until he didn't. We shared a lot in common. He was very business-minded and enthusiastic about what he does. He became my pillar. He would even take me to different places that I didn't even know of, introducing me to different people who were fashion designers. As much as I had the love of becoming a fashion designer one day, I had the skill and talent in designing clothes and bags, but my wish was to first go to fashion designer school so I would get more knowledge about it and a qualification. The more we spent time together, the more I fell for him. Was I rushing things? But you can never say no to what the heart wants and needs, right? One thing about me was that I couldn't confess my feelings, and I was not about to embarrass myself like that to a man like him. Not knowing that the feeling was mutual, actually, can you imagine that? There was this day where he took me to this very classy and nice restaurant. We were actually going for our first actual date, and it was epic, and crazy enough, it was also my birthday. Yes, I had told him when my birthday was because he had asked me, but I never thought he would actually do something so good for me. A lot of people usually forgot my birthday, except for my mother, of course. But no one had ever done anything for me or even bought me a gift. I fell in love with him each second we would spend with each other. I have already mentioned that he knew about my dreams of becoming a fashion designer, so he advised me to quit my job and start following my dream, and he was going to pay for my college fees. I didn't want that because I wanted to pay my own fees, but he insisted. I was a bit skeptical at first, but eventually agreed to his offer. I had nothing to lose, right? Months later, our friendship elevated to being girlfriend and boyfriend. I was truly happy. I had the man I fell in love with at the bookstore. He didn't become my friend only, but my pillar and motivator. So what more would I have asked for? After some months of us dating, he asked me to move in with him because the apartment I was staying in was a bit far from him and the college that I was going to attend. I was not sure about his offer. He had done a lot for me already, and I was scared that he would somehow become controlling if I agreed. So I asked for some time to think about it. I was skeptical because I didn't know the outcomes of moving in with him. After 2 full weeks of thinking, I eventually gave in and moved in with him in his apartment. I mean, I had nothing to lose, right? And it was for my own good and safety. So it was very thoughtful and sweet of him. Our relationship was a bliss. He wanted nothing about me, and he was somehow insecure, so he made sure to take me to and from college. I really don't know where he got that time, but I appreciated it a lot. I fell much deeper in love with him, you know. A year passed, everything was still a bliss, and we were very inseparable. I passed my first year very well, thanks to my man for being the best. My dream was slowly but surely becoming a reality, and I couldn't be happier. My fashion design career had started booming. My husband had introduced me to some of his associates, and that was a great start for me. His associates then marketed my designs, which gained me a lot of clients, including some celebrities. My husband was the main reason I was that person I was. My fashion was outstanding. I even dressed some celebrities. It was bliss. After 5 years of dating, he finally popped the big question, would you marry me? I was so emotional and couldn't believe that I would be spending my whole life with the man I love. Obviously, I agreed to marry this man. I mean, he was the man of my dreams. I do not regret walking down that aisle. I was the happiest woman at that time. How I wished my mother was still alive so she would see her daughter finally tying the knot with her best friend. A week after our marriage, we moved to an estate in Las Vegas. He once told me that ever since he was a child, he had always wanted to own a casino. So during his book tour, he met someone who owned a casino and was very fascinated by his book. You see the power of making connections. It really helps sometimes. They became friends, and he was invited to be a guest in his casino. He ended up telling him about his love of casinos, and they made a deal. I sat in a shop in the mall, and I hired young designers to work for me. If I wasn't at the shop, I was at home drawing or sleeping. It was sometimes boring because I had no friends. The only friend I had was my husband. That was when everything went in a different direction. He was always busy, since his casino plan became a success. I loved his determination and enthusiasm, but I also needed his time, you know. Well, time passed, and he got pretty busy to a point that I would only see him 2 or 3 times a week, mind you, that it was during winter holidays. He didn't even come back home during the week of Christmas and New Year because it would get pretty hectic. I tried to complain about it because ever since he got the casino deal, he even forgot about my birthday. And it was really unusual and alarming. So when I complained about it, he told me that he was working for our future and our children's future. That was just a lame excuse to justify his absence and behavior. Or was I reading too much on everything? When I saw that my husband was no longer spending a lot of time with me, I started getting bored to the core. I then started going out, going on solo dates, or visiting the clubs in Vegas. I was trying to pass time, you know. I couldn't stay cooped up in the house for the longest time because I didn't even know when my husband would have time for me again. I missed him so much, you know. Even our intimate moments were no longer the same. I mean, he would come back home tired, so I would sometimes wear lingerie to spice things up and bring some action spark into our life again. But I would be wasting my time and effort because he would come back very tired and he would just take a bath, eat, and just doze off. What infuriated me the most was when he would just doze off during a serious conversation and always get tired after one round of our intimate moment. It was really a turnoff for me because I wouldn't reach my climax and he would leave me hanging and fall asleep. It was no longer fun in our marriage, and I hated that. Time passed. I was starting to enjoy my solo dates, going to check on my work, then visit clubs. It was somehow therapeutic for me, and it made me kind of forget about my miserable marriage. I mean, we didn't even have children for Christ's sake, so what my husband was doing made me think that even if we were to have children, that means those children would also suffer to get his attention. I was somehow glad that we didn't have any children, or the talk of having any children because they were going to suffer like I was. I started getting compliments from other men, as much as I wished I was getting those compliments from my husband, but I was starting to enjoy it. There is that great feeling and increased self-esteem and confidence whenever you get a compliment from someone, either your partner or a stranger. I had never even thought of cheating on my husband. I loved him too much to do him like that. But I had started wearing beautiful short dresses for him, to bring back the spark, you know, but he just wouldn't pay any attention to me. He would only give me a slight compliment. That would be it. I wanted him to touch me like he used to. I agree, I was selfish. I wanted him for myself only, and I started disliking his friends and business associates for the time they were getting from him. I mean, my husband was always either on business trips or meetings, or he would be with the boys. So as time went by and I sold my shop to the highest bidder, I knew it was a stupid move, but I have had enough. I was starting to enjoy being at home all alone, since my husband was lacking in giving me attention and his time. I had to get used to being alone most of the time. People were starting to annoy me, and I felt uncomfortable in Las Vegas, since my husband was somehow a popular man. I felt like I was being watched every time I stepped out. Yes, people knew that I was his wife, and it was good at first, but I eventually got tired of being in the spotlight because of my designs and the person I had married. But it's really hard being known as the wife of the businessman, but that husband never has time for his wife, only his business and friends. I somehow felt like I was slowly becoming a furnisher in the house because I was always at the house if I was not out. His name was everywhere. I was proud of him for everything he had achieved and was in his mind. I mean, he was living his dreams, and they all came true. But I still missed him. I felt like I was just a trophy wife, someone who was just there to go to gala dinners with and come back home. He was just a hardworking man, and we only had time for intimacy once a week. Can you imagine the starvation I had? It was pretty hectic. Other women on social media thought I was just living the life, but not knowing how lonely I was. Imagine being someone you only see twice on weekdays. He comes home when you're asleep and leaves early in the morning. When he is at home, he is in his office and he doesn't want to be bothered unless you would be bringing him something to eat or snack on. I didn't know what to do anymore because he was not even paying any attention to my concerns. As much as I needed his time and attention, I was really concerned about his health. He was too attached to his work to a point that he would just lock himself in his study or small office room the whole day. I was really worried about him, and the connection that we had was slowly fading. I had been patient for way too long. I mean, even the heart that loves also gets tired, right? And love alone was not enough if there was no connection and affection. We were more life room or housemates because we were staying in the same house, sleeping on the same bed, but the connection was no longer there. I had known there and then that I had really lost my husband, not to any lady or whatever, but I lost him to his work. Time passed. He started going on his business trips for months, leaving me in the house. What did he think I was getting attention from? So I went out more often. Well, more like going to clubs more often. The way I was so stressed, I almost got myself drinking anxiety pills because of the way my husband was acting. It was stressing me out. So one night I had decided to go to the club just to unwind, I drank carelessly to a point that I didn't even know my name. So I hooked up with some guy that I had met at the club, and we actually made out in one of the restrooms, not thinking and knowing that the guy was actually taking a video of us making out. Such a pervert. One thing I loved about myself was that I would always remember everything that I had done when I was intoxicated. But that night, even God was my witness, I was way out of it, and I didn't remember anything that had gone down. When I woke up in the morning, I checked my social media just to pass time because I was waiting for my husband to come. I came across a very disturbing video, and the stranger from the club making out. It was really embarrassing. Even though my face was not showing, someone who knew me very well would know that I was the one on the video making out with that stranger. I was so angry, disappointed, and I don't even know how I can put this, but I was in a mix of emotions. I was scared that my husband or our families would see the video since it was trending, and I didn't even want to think what would happen if they were to find out. I tried getting the person who leaked the video, but unfortunately, they had posted it with a fake account. Imagine. I was very much nervous. I wished the earth would just swallow me, or I would just disappear and reappear after the whole thing had blown off. And I knew that my husband or any of our family members didn't see it. I regretted everything. Even going to that club, I regretted every minute of it. Even though going to the club helped me not to overthink about my husband's absence and how tense things had gotten between, it was really a good distraction, just that I was very much careless. Weeks passed, my husband had not said anything regarding the video, meaning he hadn't seen it. not really knowing that the big jackal had actually seen the video, but he was acting dumb and he was waiting for the time to drop the huge bomb. During those weeks, I had been looking for the guy from the club and texting the person who had owned the original post of the video, but he was not responding. I don't even know how many texts I had left him to try and reason with him to take down that video, but I got no response. It was really frustrating and annoying. My husband once asked me if I was still happy in our marriage. Stupid me. Instead of being honest, I lied and told him that I was still happy. I know it was a pretty dumb move that I had done, and I regretted not being honest in the first place because honesty and communication is the key to successful marriage and relationships, right? But I chose to be a liar and a fool out of my husband. Not knowing that he actually had a video and he knew the truth, it was just that he wanted me to come clean and confess everything to him. But I failed. About a week later, my husband had been home a lot lately, and it really surprised me because I even forgot when was the last time I had seen him around the house. The worst part is not being locked up in his office, working. As much as it was supposed to make me happy, but I was not, especially for the sudden change of heart. He would still tell me that he loved me, but I didn't, and I couldn't believe it anymore. I mean, there were a lot of loopholes in his act, and it was really alarming. One would think we were so much in love and would look like the perfect couple ever. But I knew my husband and he was hiding something from me, and I had to try and find out what he was really hiding. A month later, I still remember the day very well. It was during Thanksgiving. So during Thanksgiving, we would host our family to celebrate with us. It had always been my duty to do the cooking and everything. Plus that time, the house was full, the whole family had come to celebrate with us. So as we were all chilling and laughing, sharing a lot about our pasts, it was a happy moment until my husband asked the kids, siblings' kids, to go play in another room because he wanted to talk with the adults. I knew that there was something deep and serious he wanted to talk about. I hoped and prayed that it was not what I had thought it was. I was crossing my fingers. I was hoping that he was not going to drop a bomb and tell us that maybe he was getting a new wife, or he wanted to introduce a child that he had made when he cheated. But the meeting was actually about me, which came out as a very huge bomb. You know, a bazooka. That was what my husband had dropped. He told the family that he had something to show them. Not me hoping that he was going to show us our wedding videos just like he would always do when the family has gathered. But instead, he inserted a USB on a TV and asked everyone to enjoy the film. Imagine the nerve of embarrassing your wife like that in front of the whole family. So, as the video was still loading, I decided to go to the kitchen and pour myself a glass of wine. When I came back, I couldn't believe what I saw with my own eyes. I couldn't believe that my husband was acting all sweet and lovey-dovey, with me knowing very well that he wanted to embarrass me in front of the family. Not only my family or his family, but even the extended families were there. I wanted to just pass out there and then. My husband was playing a very disgusting and humiliating video of me and the guy from the club making out in the club's restroom. Why would he choose the day of Thanksgiving to humiliate me like that? I had thought he loved me, you know. I didn't understand why he didn't or never even thought of asking me about the video before he played it for the whole family to see. I would never ever forget the eyes that were on me that day. Everyone was in awe. My sister's disappointed looks, they would always haunt me. I mean, they still haunt me till now. What Matt did was really a very low blow and too childish. He was supposed to talk to me first or confront me before doing what he did. Did he not love me anymore to humiliate me like that? My father was really disappointed at me. I was also disappointed at myself, I won't lie. I allowed the moment of weakness to control me, and it destroyed my whole 5 years of marriage. Imagine a 5-year marriage getting destroyed by only one night. Not even one night, but an hour of weakness. To think that my sister's child, who was 10 years old, was actually looking up to me as her role model. Now that I had made the worst and biggest mistake of my life, I didn't know how she was going to look at me anymore. Yes, the kids were not in the room when the video was played, but you will never know with kids. They are very sneaky. Matt asked my family what he should do about me and the issue that we were facing. How could he even ask that? Because he was supposed to sit me down and address the issue as married people, not to humiliate me in front of the whole family. Why would he choose such a childish act to address the issue? I just couldn't believe him. Yes, I did him wrong, but he was not supposed to address the issue the way he did. You know, if looks were to kill, I was pretty sure that I would have died there. His family looked really disgusted by me, and I couldn't blame them. I mean, I couldn't blame anyone because I did what I was not sober-minded, and the worst part was that I couldn't remember anything the following day. It was like I was drugged or something. It irritated and frustrated me that I couldn't remember anything, and if I were to explain that, I know that no one would have believed me because in the video, it showed how much I was enjoying the moment. But truth be told, I wasn't, even though it would be my words against the video. I hated and I still hate the person who took the video and linked it on social media. The family was left shocked and numb, especially my family. I didn't even know how I would face them after they had seen me doing such an abomination act in the club's restroom. Matt's family started calling me names and telling me how much I didn't deserve their son, and that I was nothing but a disgrace and a humiliation to the Harrison family. It was way too much. I couldn't even have the guts to answer for myself or defend myself. I couldn't even look anyone in the eyes. I was too embarrassed and ashamed. I felt so much guilt in my heart. I wondered how my husband had felt when he first got or saw the video. I knew he loved me so much, but I was driven by loneliness and hunger for intimacy, and it led me in deep waters and I can't even swim in it. I told myself that I had to find the person who had tarnished my name like that. I mean, I was the wife of a known businessman. I was a fashion designer, and not just a simple and lousy fashion designer, but I had designed for well-known people. So imagine how much my name and reputation had tarnished, how much my husband's name was tarnished. It was really too much. I knew I had put myself into that deep circumstance, but I didn't know how I would take myself out of it. I was really emotionally and spiritually drained and depressed. I couldn't take off the words that Matt's family were spitting at me, especially his mother and sisters. They would always ring in my ears. Not to mention the disappointed faces on my family. I didn't even want to think what would have happened if my mother was still alive. Surely she would have gotten a heart attack and died on the spot. So the voices got high, the Harrison family blaming my family for everything, and telling them how much of a failure they were, because they had failed to raise me to be an honorable woman. Some even showed their true colors. The ones I had thought I knew, especially from Harrison's family, spitted the most venomous words. Some confessed how much they never liked me for their brother, while some were comparing me to Matt's ex-fiancé. As much as the video was humiliating and hurting, but the words that they were spitting were stabbing me real deep inside my heart. My father couldn't even say a word. He was lost for words, so he just decided to excuse himself. I knew there and then that I had let my father down. The only living parent, I had let him down. Most of my family members that were present in the gathering just left. Mrs. Harrison, Matt's mother, told me to pack all my belongings and leave with my family because she would never share the same house as a snake like me, and she would never allow her son to share a bed with the snake like me because it had shown that I was pretending to love their son the whole time. A lot was said. My husband didn't even say a word, and the only thing he asked was what he should do with me and how he should deal with the situation. Right there and then, I knew that my ass was getting divorced. The only thing that my father had said before he left was him giving Matt a permission to do whatever he thought was right. If he wanted to divorce, he had his support. Because I had not humiliated the Harrison family only, but also the James family, my family name. But the only thing he wouldn't support or allow is him putting his hands on me. Weeks passed. Things were very much intense. Matt had called his lawyer and asked him to draft divorce papers. I, on the other hand, was busy up and down trying to track the ghost that I had slept with. And everything I tried was fatal. I tried asking Matt to sit down so we could have a chat about the issue as adults and married people, but he wanted to hear none of the things I had wanted to say to him. He even decided to move out of the house and told me that once the divorce process has been settled, I should look for another place to stay. My conscience told me that my marriage was officially over and dusted, and there was nothing I would have done to fix it or take back the hand of time. I wished I could take back the hands of time and do things differently. Maybe I wouldn't have been in the mess that I had put myself in. I had so many maybes and what-ifs in my head, but forgetting that I had put this all to myself. It was really hurting that my husband didn't even give me a chance to explain what had really happened. Yes, the video showed what had happened, but knowing myself, I was never going to cheat on my husband on a sober-minded. After like a month or so, I tried approaching Matt again, and luckily he agreed to meet up with me so we could have a civilized talk. I knew it was too late, but it never hurt to try right. And besides, as much as our divorce was finalized, I still wanted to share my side of the story. One, I didn't know the guy that I had intimate moments with. It was like he was a ghost. And two, I didn't even remember what had happened that night. So it was like either my drink was spiked or I was way too intoxicated, which I doubt I was that intoxicated to a point that I couldn't even remember how I got home. That was impossible, right? So we met. Well, I went to our old house because he was not working. We talked and shared everything. I even shared the reasons why I started going out a lot, visiting clubs and all that. I then told him the reason for the meeting to clear the air to him that I didn't cheat on purpose, because if I had cheated intentionally, I was going to remember everything that had happened the previous day. But I didn't. Meaning, something had really happened. So I needed his help and his connections to help me track down the person who leaked the video on social media, because it was obvious that the person who did was the same person I had an intimate moment with. The video was haunting to the point that I could no longer sleep without drinking wine, at least to make me tipsy and be able to sleep. I missed my husband so much. The loneliness I was feeling when he and I were still married and he was too busy with work, and his friends was truly nothing compared to the loneliness and the pain I was feeling. It would have been better if I remembered what had taken place in that club. I loved and respected my husband and his image very much, so I would never do such a careless thing or act especially in public, just because I wanted to get my husband's attention. He was a bit skeptical at first because he wasn't sure if I was telling the truth or not, but he knew me too well. So he saw that I was telling nothing but the truth. About a week later, after Matt and I had a talk, he called me and told me that he had found the person who had linked the video. I was somehow relieved because I was going to be finally free, and people would know the truth even though I was not going to get my husband back or get his trust back. The guy had to pay for what he did because, in the world that I am living in, he committed a crime, and every crime doesn't go without any punishment. So my husband, or my ex-husband, really helped me uncover the truth, even though it was shown that no drugs or any drugging substances were put on my drink that day, which somehow made Matt pretty angry because, according to him, I think he wished to find out that my drink was spiked. The person who took and linked the video was arrested because it showed that he had a vendetta or an agenda to destroy my ex-husband. I didn't know why a person would hate me or my ex-husband so much and even think of destroying me and my image. Meaning that person had been tracking my whereabouts the whole time, and that day he saw an opportunity and took advantage of the fact that I was intoxicated to fulfill his desires. So wherever he is, I just hope that he suffers and never gets any parole because I had lost the man who had shown me nothing but love. Even though he never had time for me, but I knew that he loved me. Now I have lost all that because of his mission to destroy people's marriages. After some time, Matt and I sat down and talked about our issues, which we both decided that we would only get along as civil people. He saw that he was not supposed to hate me because the person that I cheated with was actually his competitor. So it wouldn't make sense to hate the victim while the villain was out there enjoying his stupid life. I was pretty much grateful for the fact that we had reached our common grounds and somehow came with the solution. Because according to Matt, I cheated on him because I had thought he was also cheating and he had neglected me. Though according to my own knowledge and perspective, I don't know what I was doing. I would say it was being ungrateful and not being able to be patient with my husband. I so wish things were done differently. Yes, it's too late, but I regret every stupid decision that I have made. Now I have lost everything, and there is really no one to blame but myself. I don't know how I can fix all of this and get forgiveness from my family and the Harrison family. I know everything showed that I did everything willingly, even though I couldn't remember it the following day, but only Matt knows the truth. So please help me find a way to approach both families about this issue. What do you say I should do? Please help me.
It's crazy how life can be sometimes. Not so long ago, I was excited about being married and also marrying the girl of my dreams. I was that guy that people called a loser back in high school, and she was the cool girl that hung out with the cool kids. I saw her from afar, and I was hooked, and so in love with her. She was a gorgeous blondie who looked like Barbie. And after high school, I got a scholarship to USC, though I didn't need a scholarship because my father was rich and he owned a couple of properties. But I got a scholarship because of my academic straight A's on my high school diploma. My father passed away when I was still in college and left me with all his businesses since I was the only son and child he had. I wanted to finish with my studies, so I became a shadow owner and have someone work for me while I work on my dreams. I hate a flashy lifestyle. I like being ordinary. Can you imagine an ordinary rich man? I learned that from my dad. He once said, "Son, a wealthy man isn't a consumer, but an investor," meaning accumulate more assets than liabilities, and that is how you stay on top of your game. I'm proud to say I walked in his footsteps. After some time, my mom fell in love with my stepdad, who is also the guy who works for me. Well, he used to be my father's right-hand man, but now he is my mother's husband. How unbelievable, in a twist of tables. I'm glad my father left everything to me, but I'm also glad my mom found happiness, because my mother had been miserable and depressed for the whole 2 years after my father's passing. I have nothing against my stepdad, and he is actually a very cool guy who taught me a lot about self-development. I'm now fit and healthy. I jog and also work out. That's how I attracted my ex-wife. Life after high school was not that great at all for her. She had failed high school. Luckily, she got a job and was working at the nearest coffee shop. Mom used to say she's bad news, but I didn't listen. She's the lover of things in class. She loves buying expensive clothes. I should have known better, but I was naive. Before my mom passed, we had a delightful conversation, and she said I mustn't marry her, and also I mustn't tell her about the family business she didn't trust. I didn't understand why, because she appeared to be a very good and humble girl. But I guess when they said love is blind, they were not telling lies. I, male 27, met my ex-wife, female 26, at Moneo Cafe where she worked well. We knew each other since high school, but we never talked to each other nor crossed paths. So I was having breakfast at the cafe when she came and served me coffee. I was surprised when she called me by name. I mean, we never spoke in high school, so I didn't think she would remember my name. But I guess things changed. We started talking, and she asked me what I did. I was an IT specialist. I didn't tell her everything. I kept some things to myself. She asked me if we could hang out sometimes. I was like, sure, trust me. What was like a dream come true? Because I had wanted her in high school, but she was one of those popular girls, so I saw that I was not her type. I didn't even ask her out. She was the one who asked me out. My old feelings for her started to reappear. I should have seen that this was a trap, but I was drunk in love, I think. In my eyes, she was brave for asking a guy out. I wouldn't say much as she was still beautiful. We started to hang around, and I even introduced her to my mom when my mom came by the house in New Jersey. My mom moved out when my dad passed away to California, where my dad's businesses reside the most, and that is where she started seeing my stepdad. We got married a year later into our relationship right after my mom's funeral. I didn't want to be alone, and also I was tired of funerals within the family, so I took our relationship to the next step. My mom's final words are still ringing in my ear ever since we got married. I had never told her anything about the family business. I had a trust issue. I did want to tell her, but she needed to earn my trust and prove my mother wrong. And also we had a prenup marriage, meaning what hers is hers and what's mine is mine. She had a problem with it before, but I convinced her otherwise. We moved to Pasadena, California. After our wedding, I had to be close to my businesses. I told my ex-wife that we have to move to California for a fresh start and new life. Things suddenly changed when I said I have resigned as an IT specialist. I wanted to start my own business creating an AI software that's futuristic. I sold the house in New Jersey, and also the cars flew to California and went to Pasadena, where I bought a new beautiful house and a nice Volvo SUV. On weekends, we went to the La Villa Loca Lodge where my stepdad lived, as he is now taking care of that establishment, so my ex-wife thought it was my stepdad's place. So far, she was failing the test. She thought I didn't see the light flirt she would pull with my stepdad. My software business wasn't going well at all. I was failing. It was my first time starting a business from scratch, so they were still L's I had to take, as there were a lot of things I had to learn. When my ex-wife saw that my business was failing, she said I should quit and go work for my stepdad. I was annoyed that she didn't even support me. She started nagging me ever since I started making losses. The nerve she had, she even went to put out a word to my stepdad in private telling him that my business was failing. I needed help. My stepdad was surprised that my wife doesn't know how wealthy I am because he came to tell me that my wife went to see him and to put a word on my behalf. My ex-wife was starting to spend money recklessly. She was starting to drink wine every day. Funny how she went back to being that girl from high school. It was like I was her breakthrough or her ticket back to her old self. She didn't even know how to clean the house, she only cared about herself. She started driving herself to the villa before the weekend. As fit as I am still that humble, nice guy, and since my stepdad was all alone, he'll probably need some company. That was what I thought when I allowed her to go to the villa before me. She was practically family, and also, she loved the mansion. Her words. I was swamped with work trying to figure out a new marketing strategy for my business when I got a call from my uncle telling me to come to the villa. I thought it was something urgent, but it was a problem concerning my ex-wife. She was intoxicated and apparently had a blackout and hit her head. She was unconscious. My stepdad was also too intoxicated to drive her to the hospital. Can you believe it? I thought she had found herself a drinking buddy. I was starting to be suspicious that there was more to this than just drinking alcohol together. But I couldn't let that distract me from my goals, so I let it slide. When we came back home from the hospital, she was sorry, and she even tried making it up for it. I didn't want to talk to her, so I gave her the silent treatment. Well, it only went on for a couple of days. Then we went back to our normal lives. She once told me that she was looking for a job as a model. She was starting to chase her dreams, but the habit of drinking came back. She realized it's not easy to chase your dreams as she quit after 4 attempts and went back to the red wine. We decided that we would move to the lodge and rent out the house we were living in. She was excited, and I haven't seen that side of hers in a long time. My software business started picking up. I was usually busy in and out of meetings. That's why we moved to the villa so my stepdad would keep an eye on her. I bought an apartment in San Francisco and also set up an office there for my geek team. My stepdad and ex-wife were usually alone. I sometimes have vivid thoughts about them. But my stepdad was way too old, although he exercised and his body was still in perfect shape. I never thought he would do me dirty. Well, both him and my wife. I once went to the villa without telling them that I was coming. It was surprising what I saw. They were sitting in the dining room looking at each other like they were husband and wife. They didn't even notice I was there. The way my stepdad looked at my wife made me sick, and the way she looked at him was more sickening. I couldn't stand it, so I decided to burst their little love bubble by making them notice that they were not alone. We ate dinner silently that night. After that, we went to bed. She was acting differently. She was all shy and quiet. It was awkward. It felt like we were distant, yet in the same bed. I knew from that day that something was really going on between the two, but I couldn't figure it out. I had a surprise for my ex-wife that day, but I decided to put that on hold. As I had developed trust issues, I couldn't just tell her the good news that I had when I felt the bad energy in my lodge. My stepdad was also acting up. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. The following day, they tried acting up like everything was fine and said they were just surprised I had showed up. But they didn't look surprised to me. It was more like a spoiler alert, you know. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't pretend like I didn't suspect or see that something was going on between them, so I just left the house. I asked my ex-wife to come with me so she'll see San Francisco and told her that she'll come back with me to the villa. I was separating them for a reason. I wasn't comfortable with her living alone with my stepdad. She was hesitant at first, but eventually gave in. She stayed in San Francisco for only 2 days before she hit me with the "we need to talk." I thought she was going to confess about her abomination with my stepdad. But instead, she didn't even talk. She just hit me with the words, "I want a divorce. It is not working." I couldn't believe it. You know, I was surprised and shocked. I mean, I had thought she was going to tell me what I needed to hear, but she just decided to pack her suitcase. I couldn't stop her, so I just watched her doing the packing. After she was done with her packing, she sat down on the edge of the bed and told me that she was not feeling me anymore, so it was better that we went our separate ways, and that she had found someone who satisfied her and had time for her. My conscience was ready for the revelation, but my heart was not. I was so livid. I wanted to choke her so badly. And then she apologized, which infuriated me more because she had made me a fool. and thought she would just say the stupid apology word and everything would be fine. I told myself that she didn't know me. She wouldn't toy with my feelings like that and think she would just apologize and get away with it. So as I got up, she ran for the door, dragging her suitcase. I guess she was intimidated by how furious I was. She stood by the door and told me to expect separation documents soon. Those words still haunt me till this day. I couldn't believe it. Was I not a man enough for her to do me dirt like this? Weeks passed without me going to the villa. I was angry at my ex-wife and my stepdad for having an affair, though I didn't have enough proof that they were indeed having an affair, but my conscience never lies. And deep down I knew this would happen somehow, my ex-wife having an affair. But I didn't think that it would have been with my stepdad. I admired him for his character and also for putting a smile on my mom's face when my dad passed away, you know. But I never thought he would do what he did to me, which made me think that maybe he had also done it to my dad with my mom. Or was I exaggerating a bit? The anger I had grew more as I had thoughts that maybe he had also done what he did with my mom. I mean, how you would explain him not getting married for a long time until he married my mother. Yes, it didn't make sense on how and why would he betray someone who gave him a job like that. My mother was also not a saint, so in my head, everything I was trying to connect did connect. I couldn't allow my stepdad to get away with everything, especially since my father's passing was not clear, and his relationship with my mother started not long after my father had passed on. Something didn't add up, so I opted to do my own investigation to get to the bottom of everything. You know, if he did this with my wife only, I would understand and leave things as they were because it was actually something I had expected from my ex-wife, but the fact that he married my mother also, meaning he did it to my father, which might have been the reason why we lost him. The wicked man knew a lot more than I did, and I had to find out what that was. A month passed and I was still staying at the lodge. I had hoped that maybe Stacy, my wife, would come back to her senses, but she proved me otherwise. Not that I was surprised, but I thought she loved me just like how I loved her uneducated ass. I should have known that she would do that. I mean, they say old habits die hard, right? And I thought she had changed from the Stacy I went to school with. Was I that naive to think that she would change? The reason why I had been ignorant about her old habits was because I really had hope. I thought she was going to realize that her habits were not good and change, you know. I loved her. Well, I loved her since high school. But that time she was rolling with other cool kids who were on her level, and I was the nerd that didn't fit in her world. So I stayed with the crush I had, up until the day I saw her, and made her my girl. I had thought she had become a humble lady, but I thought wrong. 1 week later, I had managed to get the best private investigator who would be able to help me in digging more evidence and information about my stepdad. My guts kept telling me that there was something that my stepdad knew more than that I could have let on. So an investigation done by the best investigator was going to be my ticket to know everything I needed to know. I believed that once I was done with my stepdad, I would make sure he suffers before kicking him out of the villa. I allowed them to enjoy their little love nest in my villa until I had gathered enough of what I wanted to know. I kept monitoring their phones without them knowing, of course. I had seen that my stepdad had been living the best life with Stacy in my villa. Well, my father had left him some money also when he died as his trusted right hand. But I was not about to let him enjoy my father's hard work for free. Not while there was a possibility that he had betrayed my father by stabbing him in the back. Then took his wife, not long after we had buried him. As much as I was blaming my stepdad for whatever that he did. But I also put the blame on Mom because had she not entertained my father's right-hand man, surely my father would have been alive maybe. No one knew what caused my father's death, and it was just sudden. I had thought I knew my mother, but she was also a villain in all the things that had happened in our family. Unfortunately, she had decided to take her easy way out before I even found out the truth. One thing I was grateful for that my mother had done was that she didn't forget to remind to be careful of Stacy. She warned me a lot of times, but I was clouded by love and thought she was nothing like the person my mother had known. I had thought life had humbled her and she had changed. But that wasn't true. Instead, I got the highest level and second season of who the real Stacy was. I should have seen through her when she was the one who asked me to take her out, that I was trapping myself in a worst possible way. Throughout my investigation with the help of the private investigator, of course, I found out that my stepdad and my father were into illegal businesses also, But my stepdad was the one operating everything because my father didn't want to tint his name and use the stepdad for his illegal business. I couldn't believe that my father had a shady business on the side. I had thought he was an honest man, but my thoughts were always wrong, and it angered me that I knew nothing about the business he was doing on the side. No wonder my stepdad was always at the villa even when my father was away on a business trip. He would come home more often, saying he came to make sure that we were okay since my father was away. I should have known that his often checkups were actually to see my mother, not the other way around. Was I that stupid to even put two and two together to figure out what was happening at home right under my nose? As the investigation continued, I found out that my father found out that my stepdad was having an affair with my mother, but he found that out 2 days before he passed on. That didn't make any sense to me because he would have confronted them both, my stepdad and my mother, the day he found out about the affair, but he kept quiet. There was really more to whatever that was, so I dug more deeper, and I found out that my stepdad had a history that he was dating young girls, and what he did to me, having an affair with my wife, was not the first time he did it, meaning my stepdad was a homewrecker. I don't know if men are called homewreckers, but he was, and not only a homewrecker, but he was dating young girls, and I was the proof of that. I don't know why I found that disgusting, because it was. But there was this one intriguing evidence that I found, and it made me happy that I had discovered it. I was able to bring my father's death to justice. Even though they had said he died in his sleep due to stress pressure, he had. That does not make any sense, right? I just couldn't believe it because I had trusted my stepdad with my father's assets until I was mature enough to take over. So in my findings, I found out that my father had passed on due to suffocation, meaning someone had suffocated him to death, and that happened 2 days after my father had found out that my mother and my stepdad were having an affair. And in those 2 days, my father had an altercation with my stepdad because he had found out that my stepdad was two-timing him on the illegal business side, plus my mother and stepdad had planned to scam my father off his businesses. How wicked was that? It was evident that my mother had a hand in my father's passing. I hated him even though she is no more, but what he did to my father was cruel and greedy. I mean, why would you look at your son suffering because of his father's passing while knowing that you had a hand in it? My stepdad was not his first time making women betray their husbands because the evidence showed that he once did it to another businessman who trusted him. He got into a relationship with the wife only for him to use the wife for his dark desires. Once the husband found out that he was planning on scamming him, he sent authorities to arrest him. When my father found him, he was out of jail after being prisoned for 5 years. I think my father was also a dumbass because how can a smart person trust a jailbird? And the worst part is introducing him to your family as your right-hand man. My father was kind-hearted. He thought he was giving my stepdad another opportunity to find himself. But old habits die hard, right? My father didn't see it coming. I wondered if he didn't do any thorough investigation on him before introducing him to us. So he also used my mother for his own greed and selfishness. Another thing I found out was that my so-called wife was actually a body seller. She was working at the cafe as a day job. She owned an OnlyFans account where she was getting all nasty and freaky with old people who were lonely, so they paid her for her nasty videos. I was really disgusted and disappointed because though she was a forward girl at school, her parents were afforded. I wondered why she would resort to selling her body. The worst part of one of her videos was seen on Twitter Imagine. Why was I so blind? All the information that I had got really infuriated me. I wanted to avenge my father and myself. I couldn't allow them to get away with everything. What infuriated me more was that I had been a fool the whole time because my own mother knew what my stepdad was capable of and agreed to perform such a facade with him so that they could get my father's riches. On the other hand, Stacy made me fall in love with her and made her my wife only for her to make a fool out of me and perform an abomination with my stepdad. All for what? For riches that were not even his. I continued monitoring all their steps without them knowing, of course. My plan was to destroy both my ex-wife and my stepdad. How I wished my mother was also still alive so I would destroy 3 birds with 1 stone. But do you think my stepdad would have gotten into a relationship with my wife if my mother was still alive? Everything was confusing. Time passed and I had gained enough strength and courage to face my backstabbers, and I was in a mix of anger, sorrow, and disappointment. I was disappointed with my parents and my wife. I had thought my wife was going to prove my mother wrong, but she did exactly as my mother had warned me about. I married Stacy not knowing anything about her parents. I have never even met them, and she never talked about them. I was floating in my love bubble and I didn't mind many things, which were very important. I should have asked her or checked her background, but I didn't. And the thing I found during my investigation was that her parents had disowned her because she was not just a rebellious child, but she trended on social media advertising her nudity and freaky acts. Plus, she had a history of getting into a relationship with a married man who was her father's associate, which led to his wife finding out, and unfortunately the wife, Stacy's father's associate, couldn't make it. Also, her mother passed on due to heart attack, which was triggered by the video of Stacy doing nasty acts on social media. That led to her father disowning her. Was I that ignorant? And I gathered all the information and asked the private investigator to send me Stacy's videos. You know, when you are driven by anger and hunger of revenge, you do anything to ease your conscience. I couldn't allow them to scam me like they did to their past. So I took all the information and took it to the authorities, but before that, I called a meeting in my father's business that he had left me, and that was run by my stepdad when I was still at school. I met with all the shareholders and told them that my stepdad was stepping down, meaning I would be the one in charge. Obviously, it was not easy having to make my stepdad step down on his position, but I had to show him the evidence that I had gathered and told him that I would put it on the press and the authorities. Then I asked him to sign all his rights that my father had given them to me. He was livid and told me that I would regret everything that I had done and I would miss him. One thing about me is that I would rather be alone than be with backstabbers. A week after, I contacted my lawyer regarding the divorce and made it quick, and it was a great fortune that we weren't married in a community of property. I had delayed the divorce process so I would be able to gather the evidence that I had found. After I had signed the papers, I went to the villa and asked them to pack everything that had belonged to them and move out. Stacy threw fits and insults and told me that I had no right to chase them out of the villa because it was not mine, but my stepdad's. I couldn't believe it, so my stepdad had told her that he owned the villa, fully knowing that I was the owner of it. No wonder Stacy left me for him. She fell for his lies. I just told them that they had only a week to pack everything that had belonged to them and move out. A few days later, my stepdad once called me asking for forgiveness and also pleading with me to not kick him out of the villa. Surely he thought I was still that naive small boy, so I just told him that I had nothing else to say to both him and Stacy. A week passed. I saw no movement of them moving out, so I went to the authorities and told them to accompany me to kick people out of my villa and gave them the information I had gathered about my stepdad. When we got there, I found them arguing. Stacy didn't want to move out, and my uncle's accounts were blocked. Nothing was said to anyone, and the authorities did their job and arrested my stepdad for all the things that he had done. I mean, nothing stays in the dark forever, right? A few days after my stepdad got arrested, Stacy came back and tried to apologize for all the things she had done. She came back telling me that she was pregnant with my stepdad's child and she had nowhere else to go, meaning she wanted me to take her back to the villa because she told me that she didn't know that I had owned the villa. She thought it was my stepdad's. I told her to go back to her father's house, but she threw tantrums. It surprised me to know that my ex-wife was actually a very selfish person. She never thought of anyone but herself and what was best for her. To even think that all the signals were there, but I didn't pay attention to them. The only thing that I had paid attention to was my father's business and assets, making sure that I made him proud. I also blame myself for what happened between Stacy and I. Yes, I was not supposed to tell her about my father's businesses, and I didn't, which was one thing that I had done well. But when it comes to giving my wife attention she needed, I failed dismally. For a couple of weeks, Stacy went on to social media and tried to drag my name into the mud. Luckily, I managed to get her to delete all the nasty things she had said about me. I had to threaten her that I would realize her nude pictures and nasty videos that she was doing for the old married men. She was not over the fact that I had arrested my stepdad. She hated me, and the feeling was mutual. I mean, she made me believe that she loved me for me and not for what I was offering. I decided to sell the villa because it had a lot of memories, good and bad. As much as my father loved it and trusted me to take good care of it, I had to let it go so that I would be able to start my life afresh and create new memories. The villa held a lot, from my childhood to my father passing on in mysterious ways in his sleep. I lived in the villa and worked with my stepdad to take out my father so they could take ownership or live there happily ever after in my villa. A lot had happened, so it was time to let it go. I had enough money to buy me another villa. Though it was not easy letting go of all your good and bad memories, it was going to depress me. 8 months later, I bumped into Stacy again. I had even forgotten about her. She didn't look very well. She was also heavily pregnant. I once heard someone say, "Life will humble you if you are not humble to it." And that was what was happening to Stacy. Life humbled her to a point that she stayed in one of the cheapest and unsafe apartments in San Diego. As much as she had done me bad, I couldn't allow her to continue staying there. If she was not pregnant, I was not going to help her, and that is the truth. Somehow I once loved her, and when I saw her in those apartments full of junkies, I thought about the goods my stepdad once did for me and my family. As much as his bad acts were way too many than his good deeds, I couldn't let the innocent child suffer. I was not doing it for my stepdad, but I was doing it to honor my father. He once trusted my stepdad, and he helped look after my father's businesses after he had passed on until I had grown enough to take over. So I took Stacy to a better and safer apartment. I asked her why she didn't want to go back to her father's house, and she told me that his father doesn't want her, and he had remarried an evil woman, meaning she once had tried going back home. After I had made sure that she had settled well and there were enough things that she would need, I gave her some rules and told her that if she ever breaks them, she was going to go back to San Diego and I would take the child to child social services. A month later, she gave birth to the cutest baby girl. I loved and still love children. I wished I had a small sibling, but God decided otherwise. Stacy didn't forget to nag me with eternal apologies and assured me that she had changed. Whatever she was doing it out of desperation. She was desperate to get a father figure and attention, which was why she resorted to getting into relationships with rich married men most of the time, because her own father never had time for her, but he had time for her other siblings. I wondered why she had never told me that. I was her husband, so I had a right to know. I know I had been a bad husband to her because I was busy chasing money and making sure that I did not let my father down because he had trusted me to continue with his legacy. I felt really bad that I was also the cause of her resorting to spending time with my stepdad. Not that I regretted putting my stepdad in jail. He deserved it, and everything that is still coming to him. But what I regret is punishing someone who wanted attention. Yes, I gave and showed her love, but never attention, and that made me feel like a jerk. I continued supporting my stepdad's child, and I vowed to myself that I will take good care of the child and be the father to her, but I was not going to get back with Stacy. A leopard doesn't change its spots, so if I were to take her back, how sure would I know that she won't repeat what she had done, and how would I ever forget the betrayal she once did? I don't know if I made a good decision for what I did. Do you guys think I handled everything well, or I should have done better?